All right, we are live. Hey, y'all.
Live.
Oh, I've got a echo. Okay. All right. Hello. Give me a hello in the chat if you can hear me. Let me cue this up over here. I am doing a mini class today and super excited to talk to you about getting customers for your business idea. And really, I want to talk about how to get customers, like not after you have finished the entire business plan and like know exactly what you're doing. I want to talk about how to get customers for your business idea before you start anything, like while you're still coming up with the idea, while you're still like refining everything. Like that's what I want to talk about. So give me a hello in the chat if you're joining. And again, let me put this into, I'm live streaming both on YouTube and Instagram here, so let me pin this. Boom. Okay, we're talking about getting customers. So I see. Hello. Okay. Sage is here. Oh, kids. Kendra. Kendra is here. Becoming Conscious is here. Master Pro is here. Elise is here. Very cool. All right. Hello. Hello. Give me a hello in the chat if you were here for the mini class. All right. So I want to talk about getting customers before you have even really done much in your business. And I want to start by sharing really two stories. I'm going to share two stories about how this has worked for me. And I'm also going to talk about why the heck you would even consider in a million years trying to get customers before you've started the whole business and got the whole business all together. So I want to just check in with y'all because I want to be able to cater this mini class to you. So here's my request. I want you to put the number one, type 1 into the chat if you already have a business that has customers, and type a 2 in the chat if you have like an idea for a business, but you don't have customers yet. You're like a 1 if you have customers, 2 if you don't, just so I can see where you are so I can cater this to you. I'm going to mainly be talking today to folks who do not yet have customers. However, you could use this to get more. So it's the same tactic. Okay, I see some ones, two. Someone says 1 and 2. How does that work? Tell me about that. Okay, I see 1s, 2s. Okay, so there's a mix here. Some of y'all have customers, some of you don't. This tactic is going to be useful regardless. But let's talk about why you would work ahead, essentially, why you would work ahead and go talk to customers, go get customers signed up and actually paid. Go get paid customers before you have finished everything with your business plan. Can anyone think of why this would be useful? Type in the chat if you have any ideas of like why this would be useful. I'll tell you why I have done it, but I would love to hear why y'all think this might be helpful as a strategy to get customers before you start building everything or finish building everything, really. Anyone have thoughts? For me, one of the reasons, Ebony says in the chat, funding. Yeah, that's a really good point. So you can fund your business with customers, right? Like lots of times people talk about funding the business with investors, funding the business a bunch of different ways. The best way to fund your business is with customers who pay you. So that's always the goal. And I often find that a lot of times people are like, okay, I know what I need to do. I want to get investors. I want to get people to help me. And they don't consider first funding themselves with customers. So yeah, you want to spend some time up front proving the concept and making sure that you have it fine-tuned. Like, how do you talk about it to customers? What do you need to say that resonates for them? How do you even need to craft the offer? Whether it's, a consulting package you're doing or an app or like whatever it is, you need to figure out how to craft it. So when I was first starting my first company, I had an idea for, and it eventually became an app, but in my head, I actually started it as a service. This is actually one of the special tricks that you should consider too in launching a idea, because a lot of times we have ideas for like a physical product or a electronic product, and that's great. But I want you to first imagine a version of that is a service. Because for a version of that is a service, you can go offer it to people and they're not going to ask you, like if it's an app, for example, people are going to ask you like, can I see it first? And so if you're in a position where you're not finished yet, you're working on revisions, or you have, some other thing and you need to work on it or fine tune it, the best thing to do is create a service version of that thing first. So when I came up with my idea, I eventually built an app that was an art algorithm, so it matched people to artwork based on their taste. But when I first launched this, I was like, okay, how can I get this out there first? I'm going to create a service version of this first. So instead of the app doing all the finding of the work, I'm going to roll up my sleeves just for the first few customers and do it myself. Because the nice thing about having a service is that you can go and no one's looking for any social proof or any proof of the thing existing already. There's nothing that exists. It's a service. So that's one of the first things you want to think through if you're going to try to go get customers before you finished making something. I know a lot of you guys are thinking about app ideas or more robust service business ideas. The first thing you want to do is position it as a simple service just to start. So what I did when I first came up with my first idea was I created just a simple website for it. Now, mind you, I had nothing in place. I didn't even know how I was going to find art for people. I had no clue how I was going to do this, but I put up a website explaining what the service was going to be. So it said become an art collector, get a personal stylist for your walls. I remember that's what it looked like. It was a really ugly website, by the way. And so I launched this website. And instead of me first figuring out, I could have done a bunch of work first. I could have been all right, well, first I got to build the art algorithm, and then I've got to get a whole team of art advisors to help me pick artwork for people. I could have done that. But instead, I did it backwards. I essentially built it as I went. It's funny, quick side story. When I was working at Microsoft, because before I became an entrepreneur, I worked at a background in tech. And so when I worked at Microsoft, I remember my boss saying something to me, and I thought it was literally the dumbest thing in the world. He was like, we're just going to build the airplane in the air. That's what he said. And I thought that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why would you build an airplane in the air? But literally, that's the definition of what a startup is. You are building the airplane as you go, right? And so that's exactly what I did. Instead of having the entire plan all the way fleshed out, I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to work. So what I did was I created a landing page, just a one-page website. And I found my first customers. I had a couple different ways. The first way is I just posted on my own Facebook page what I was doing. So mind you, this felt really scary at the time because I did not identify as an entrepreneur. Everybody, no one knew in my social circle that I was working on entrepreneurship. No one knew any of that. But nonetheless, and I still didn't, I didn't have my whole plan together either. So nonetheless, I posted on my own Facebook page. And I was like, hey, launching this cool startup. It wasn't even a startup at the time. It was just an idea. But I was launching this cool startup, fake it till you make it. And I'm going to be helping people find artwork for their homes. Now, notice, I didn't give the whole complicated full vision. I wasn't there's going to be an algorithm and an app and all those things. Because if you tell them there's going to be an algorithm and an app and all those things up front, the first thing they're going to say is what? Cool, can I see it? So that wasn't the way that I positioned it. Instead, it was important for me to say, hey, I'm just helping people do this, right? I wasn't very narrow about how. I was just I'm helping people accomplish this goal. Know anyone who might be interested. And my first customer who literally just messaged me as a result of that post. First person who messaged me was I didn't know him, but he was a friend of a friend at my job. He also worked at the company that I worked at Microsoft at the time. And my second customer was someone that I had gone to high school with. And I was I'll take it, right? So the first thing that I did was I just posted on my social and I got interested customers from there. Now, mind you, as soon as I got my first customer, then I had to be okay, great. How am I going to do this, right? So what I did after that, as soon as I got my first customer, I then went to LinkedIn and I typed into LinkedIn art advisor and I found a bunch of art advisors that were on LinkedIn, complete strangers. And I was hey, I sent messages to some people whose profiles looked interesting. And I essentially said, hey, I'm starting this company. I'm helping people find artwork. Would you be willing to help me find artwork for people? And if we sell the artwork, I'll give you a commission, a percentage of the sale. right? Now, mind you, like this wasn't any artwork that I had in inventory. We were just looking on the internet to find artwork. So I've created a service version of my idea first. Eventually, it became an app and an algorithm and all of that. The first version was just the service version of it. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat if that makes sense. So that was how I got my first customers. I posted on social. The second that I got the first yes, I then went and built the rest of the airplane, right? Now, I was way more motivated to build the rest of the airplane once I got my first yeses, and you likely will be too. And also, let me tell you, I'm so glad that I got my first customers first, because they told me a bunch of stuff that they wanted and that they didn't want that I was able to refine. So, an example of this. I was really positive. I was like, you couldn't tell me anything. This is so funny too when I think about my like entrepreneurial journey. When I started, no advice would have been helpful. Like I just had to figure it out on my own. But I was very sure, I was very confident that my customers were going to want to have this like video enabled experience. So you like open up the app or the website and there's an art advisor who can then like video chat with you, right? And talk to you and just be like, hey, like, I don't know much about art, but like I went to a museum one time and they had this thing that I liked. Like, could you find me something like that? Like I wanted to create a video enabled experience as part of the app. Now, in order to first launch though, I didn't have an app already built, right? I made my first $35,000 in revenue without having like a proper app. I had like cobbled together some things, right? So at first I didn't have the app built. I didn't have the whole thing built. And I was still getting customers and people interested because I created a service version of it. Then I could then refine it and create it and turn it into a product. But I remember I really wanted to create a video enabled experience. And I tried with, it wasn't Zoom. Zoom wasn't even like a thing at the time. What was it? What did we use? We used a different service for video chat, essentially. And I was like, hey, click here. You can video chat with your art advisor. Let me tell you something. Nobody did it. Literally nobody did it. And I started asking people like, hey, how come you signed up? You're interested. How come you're not doing this part? It might have been Skype at the time. I don't even remember. I think I found like some obscure like site for people to video chat with, right? That made it easy. But no one did it. And what I learned was that for my customers who didn't know a lot about art, the idea of video chatting with someone who's like an art expert who you have, and you feel like you don't know very much or you don't know enough about art, like that's kind of intimidating. Right. So that experience, that whole video enabled experience, they're like, I don't want that. I just want to be able to type and answer some questions and then you go find art for me. So I learned that in building it as I went. I'm really happy that I did not invest hours and lots of money in creating something that my customers didn't even want. So one of the nice things about getting customers up front and before you start is that you get to get really clear on what they want and then go build that, right? Here's another, Tim has a question before I move on. Tim has a question, how many users from the 35K? Okay, this was like 6-7 years ago, so I'm trying to remember. The average pieces of artwork that we sold, I remember this was like $3,000 was our average price point. So what is the math on that? That's like 11, 12 customers-ish, something like that, right? And what I did was I gradually made, as I got more customers, I gradually made my product fancier. So I first got customers and then I made it fancier. So what happened was my first version, I'm going to see if I can like dig up some of these screenshots of these old versions of the product that I built. But the first version was a Typeform. You guys use Typeform before? I literally just used Typeform because the first version was just a service, right? First version was service. I used Typeform. People were able to like type in and answer questions about what they liked. So I would show them different pieces of artwork and they could say if they liked it or didn't like it. So we would learn about their taste. So there was like an onboarding survey, right? And then Once they answered that onboarding survey, I gave them another type form where I manually put art into like pictures of artwork that I thought that they would like in there. That was a service version to begin with. And I got lots of feedback that then informed the next more automated and more app-like versions, right? So that was how I got my first customers. The first customers were literally from posting on my own social. And this is like a word to those of you who are like holding off and you're like, I'm not going to post on my social media. I don't want people to know what I'm doing yet. Anyone in that, put like a 1 in the chat if you've been like not really sure about posting publicly what you're doing and what you're building and your business idea on social media for your friends to see. Have 1 into the chat if you've been a little like scared about it. And give me a 2 in the chat if you've just been like telling everybody online. Okay. Yeah, I see some 1s. Yeah, like the thing is, that's stopping you from getting your first customers. And I know, like, I totally understand how it feels like I can't do this yet. I shouldn't do it yet because I'm not ready. I'm not finished, right? I would encourage you to go get some of the first interested customers first. You can take it as far as charging the customers, but have them have them secure their seat on the wait list. That's essentially what you're doing. Worst case scenario, you refund the money, but you learn a whole crap ton when you have real paying customers as opposed to people who are just like, oh yeah, I will give you feedback on your idea. You do not want feedback on your idea without them being someone who would be an interested customer. Why? Let's say that you ask, I'll give you a great example, right? Like I can ask my mom what she thinks about my app idea and she'll give me all kinds of feedback, but she's not giving me feedback of the kind of paying customer that I'm looking for, likely, right? Depending on what the app idea is, but she's likely not my customer. So you want to be careful about getting feedback from people who are not your best customer, right? Your ideal customer. So first way that I got customers before I started was posting on social. The second way was I posted what I was working on. And by the way, at this time, what I was working on was still just a landing page. There was no technology behind it. There was no like streamlined service or anything. It was just the landing page at this time and me sitting behind the landing page like, ooh, someone signed up. Let me go do some manual work, right? So at that point, I also posted my idea on producthunt.com. Product Hunt. Now, Product Hunt has changed a little bit. I think Product Hunt now requires you to have a little bit more built and more finished. That's kind of more of the culture. I would look at some other options now. Like there's a site called betalist.com that's really good too. I actually posted on both of those. So I posted my website, a description about what I was building, and the name of my business, Collecto, and got more customers. My next group of customers, probably like 10 next customers from that, right? So those were the first 2 ways that I was getting customers. I was posting on social, and I also posted on Product Hunt and Beta List, these 2 sites that they're kind of like, are you guys familiar with Product Hunt and Beta List? Let me know in the chat if you've heard. So put like yes if you've heard of it, no if you've not heard of those sites. Essentially what they're like directories of new companies that people are working on. And there are a lot of people on there who like to be patrons and customers of new businesses and new ideas. So that's where I posted to find some initial customers. So those two ways of getting customers before I really had much built allowed me to generate revenue for my business so that I could be like, all right, I'll do this. I think this makes sense for me to invest my time in. The alternative is for you to invest a lot of time and not know yet if it makes sense. And it is possible. This is not because like you are bad, but it is possible that like people will not be interested in the thing you're building. That is possible, right? It's totally possible. Not because you are a bad person, but because like most startup ideas don't succeed, right? You have to make sure that you refine it, how you talk about it. It has to be the right offer for the right people, right? I'll give you one more example. I am launching a new company now. It's called Copycat. And what it is a copywriting service. So there are advertising agencies out there. And what they do is they write ads for their clients and then they post them on Google and Facebook and run ads for them. So these services run ads for companies. And in part of running ads for companies, they have to write the ad. And so I'm launching a new company where we write the ads. We use some technology to do it and humans to do it. And that combination writes ads for all of their clients, right? Now, before I do anything, I'm going to get customers first. That's the first thing that we're doing. So the first thing is that me and my team, we've been on LinkedIn and we're searching for agency owners and we are messaging them and we're saying, hey, would love to chat with you. We have this service. We write your ads for you. Here's how it works. Now, do I have everything clear and structured and ready to go? Absolutely not. I don't even have an account manager. I'm telling them like, hey, I'll introduce you to, once you sign up, I'll introduce you to your account manager. Here's how it'll work. Worst case scenario, I will be the account manager until I find an account manager, right? But sometimes you have to validate it first, because what doing that is really teaching us and teaching me is what parts of this idea that I came up with do they care about? And what parts do they not care about, right? How do I need to change the service? Oh, they actually want something totally different. Let me refine it. So I'm doing sales calls and getting people signed up. And I'm just like, I haven't mapped out every single thing. I'm just getting started, but I'm still, first thing I do is go validate it with the customers, right? Does that make sense? What questions do y'all have about this? There's a question Sarah has. Did you just claim Collecto? Did you get a trademark registered for a logo before posting the name of your service? No, I did not. I bought the domain. I did buy the domain. And I went to like GoDaddy.com and bought the domain. So I did do that. And in fact, when I first launched Collecto, I couldn't afford the Collecto.com domain because it was like, I don't know, it was maybe like $2,000. And I was like, I'm not paying that. So I bought artcollecto.com instead, right? So I didn't even have the official domain. I wouldn't spend much time on that at all. Customers first, because what I was able to do was I got customers. The customers validated to investors that they should invest. And then I had my first $150,000 investment. I took $2,000 of that because it was no big deal and bought the domain, right? How do you decide on pricing? There's a question. Do you price lower initially? I have no idea what to charge. I know that it is common for people to price low. Like that is the instinct. Everything in your being is going to want you to price something low and then to like, well, if I need to, I'll increase it, right? Go the other way. It is much easier to price it high. And then if someone's like, oh, this doesn't work for me, then you price it, then you give them a lower option. It's much easier to go down than it is to go up, right? So I would recommend that you charge a little bit more than what you feel comfortable with. I had a meeting about this today for this new company that I'm launching because we were going to price it at really affordable. And even someone on my team was like, I think that we're underpricing it. Let's start high. And then what we can do on the phone is if they say like, oh, this sounds perfect. The only thing is it doesn't quite fit in our budget. We can then pivot, but it's much easier to go down and like essentially be like, hey, okay, well, what I can do is I can create a special deal for you. Here's what it would look like. Now, by the way, if you do that, what you want to do is you want to take something out. So if you think about a service or an app, an experience, whatever it is, there's multiple things that you get, right? Features that you get, parts of the service that you get. If you lower your price, you need to take something out. If you lower the price, take something out. That's okay, but that's sort of how that structure works. Take something away in order to get them a lower price. It creates the right sort of like negotiating dynamic. And then, okay, to go back, did I get a trademark registered to, I think I answered that question clearly, but no, I did not. In fact, I've never done a trademark register ever in my life. Sarah, okay, I guess I'm worried about putting my name out there and I'm afraid that someone will take it. Is that a silly concern at this point? Yes. Yeah, kind of. So here's the thing. This is how maybe it's useful for me to share how I think about ideas. Ideas are like little, I don't know, I like think of them as like a little fairy that like comes and lands on your shoulder. It's going to go to multiple people. You don't own that idea. It is likely that right now in this moment, there are at least 100 other people in the world who have your same exact idea. It's not that special. That's the bad news. The bad news is not that special. Somebody already is probably doing something similar to what you're doing, what you want to do. The good news is, so what? Right? Like there's always more than, there's no industry where there's only one of something, right? There's Uber and there's Lyft, and they make plenty of money just fine, right? There's Chrome and there's Safari. There's Google and there's Apple. There's iPhone and there's Android. Like there's always more than one. If you go down the bread aisle, how many brands of bread do you see? So many, right? So I would not be really worried about someone taking it from you. Ideas don't actually work that way. People already have this idea. There's nothing like, there's no such thing as a like completely unique and novel idea. There only is just people who execute on their ideas and people who never do anything with their ideas. That's the distinction. So I wouldn't spend much time worried about like someone taking your idea. You have your own spin on it that you're going to execute with, right? And so that's just fine. I think you should have a clear customer, like a very niche specific customer that you're going to go after. That's going to make a world of difference for you. If you don't want to launch your idea and it be for everyone, right? That's like a rookie mistake. Oh yeah, this is for everyone. It can eventually be for everyone. But if you think about Facebook, for example, when Facebook launched, it was literally just for Harvard students. Right. Those are the only people who could use it. And then they slowly expanded to like different schools, and then they expanded to all university. And now my grandmother is on Facebook. So, you expand, but you want to start specific. And so then you have your own spin on it. Okay. Other questions. EP says, is it safe to build your product on the no-code platforms? Oh, that's a good question. Okay. So we're not really talking about no-code platforms today. However, I'm happy to share how this works. I just want to catch everybody up if you don't know what I'm talking about. I run a school called Apps Without Code. So I teach people how to build apps, web apps, mobile apps without knowing how to write any code. So you build the app by drag, drop, point, click, and then you tell the app what to do in English, right? So that we all can do it. And in addition to teaching those technical skills, I also teach about like business and like we're talking about today, and how to actually structure a business around your idea, whether that's an app or not. So just so that you know what EP is talking about when they ask about no-code platforms. That's what we're talking about. These platforms that let you build the app, drag, drop, point, click, and then tell the app what to do in English. Now, yes, it is totally safe for you to build the product on no-code platforms. And I'm going to talk about safety in two different components. The first component is ownership. Like a lot of times people will ask me if I post the app on a no-code platform, do I still own it, or does the platform own it? Like, how does that work? So to think about this, imagine that you're an author and you open up Microsoft Word and you go to write a book, right? Microsoft does not own your book. You just happen to use their tool to write the book on it, but like they don't get to own any of the book. That's not how it works. So it's the same thing with the no-code platforms. You use their platform to build your app, but they don't own your app or your idea or your business or any percentage of it or anything like that. So that's how that works. Also, the other component of safety I want to talk about is security, like making sure that like the data isn't hacked and that the data is safely secured. If people type things into your app, that it is safely being hosted. So that's another element of safe. I'm not sure, EP, which one of those things you were talking about, so I'll address both. All of the app building tools that I recommend are hosted on one of two safe database platforms. And database just means the place where information is saved in your app. That's what it means. So they either use a service called Amazon Web Services or Google Firebase. These are like the industry standard software and tools for hosting things on apps, whether you're building it with no code or with code. What I'm saying is these no-code builders, they host your data the same way that you would if you were building an app. In fact, it's a little bit more safe because it's already built in and there's no way you can screw it up. If you're building with code, you can screw up your database structure and your security of your database. Because you're building without code, it's already properly set up for you, so you don't even have to deal with that. But they're using the same database storage information, same app storage information in the back end that you would be using if you were coding Amazon Web Services or Google Firebase. Does that help? Let me know if I answered your question. Okay, any other questions? This is a mini class, so it's short and sweet. I just wanted to talk to you about getting started and getting customers before you start. There's a question, how long did it take you to become successful? That's a great question, and I think, like, if we're going to be honest, we have to talk about what do you mean successful? Define that, right? I'm going to, follow up on your question about what you mean by that, because, it's successful that you made your first $10,000 in business. What does successful mean? And then I can tell you. But I think that actually brings up an even broader conversation, which is that whether or not you feel successful is mainly up to you, right? For a lot of my entrepreneurial career, I did not feel successful, even though I was hitting all of these benchmarks. I still felt like there was more to do. Oh my gosh, I'm not successful enough. I haven't done the next thing yet. So that really had to be a mindset shift for me, where I got to just decide that what I have done thus far is successful enough. And you probably could decide that for yourself too. You kind of have two options, right? You either take a little bit of the unhealthy, I need to do more, I'm not successful enough, and you use it as fuel, which is an option, maybe not the most balanced option, but it's an option. That's what most successful people do. They take their unhealthy discomfort about feeling like they need to do more, and they channel it into doing more. Or you realize that everybody here has been successful in their own rights, in their own areas, in their own ways, and you feel comfortable as you go along the journey with your success. I think I could call myself successful now, and also there's so much more I want to do. Right. So that's really a mindset question. Yeah, Trails is saying that. It's really a mindset question more than anything. Does that answer your question? That's at least how I think about it. Cool. Sarah says, thank you for the honesty. Yeah, of course. Of course. And my counseling clinic says, thank you for the niching reminder. Do you guys say niche or niche? I don't really know. But essentially, it's going to a specific target customer. I say the riches are in the niches because it rhymes, but I know a lot of people say niche. Cool. Okay, so here's my bite-sized mini class wrap-up encouragement to you. My wrap-up encouragement to you is that you go tell some people, ideally some prospective customers, what you're working on now, this week. Probably by tomorrow, because if you wait after the tomorrow, you know good and well you're not going to do it. So I would challenge you. Here's my challenge. My challenge is that you carve out an hour, 30 minutes tomorrow to either post on social media and tell people what you're working on, even though it's not fully finished and fully ready, just tell them. Or if you want to do it more aggressively, you go on either a Facebook group or LinkedIn, find where your customers are potentially, and directly message some people and tell them. You do level 1. If you haven't done this already, just tell your friends and family on social, post it on your Facebook, tell them what you're working on in detail. Don't be weird and vague about it. Just speak regular language, regular English, and say, hey, this is what I've been up to. And add in there, add the sentence, know anyone who'd be interested in this? Give people a prompt to send you referrals over. It'll help you get started way faster than what you're probably doing right now, which is really overthinking it, not launching it yet, just taking a really long time. To clarify too, Cassandra has a good question. What if you don't have a landing page yet? If you don't have this on a website yet, can you do this? Yes. In fact, you want to know a secret? I hate landing pages. I think you can launch any website without a landing page. Any website without a landing page. And so it's totally not necessary or needed. If people are like, hey, this is interesting, can you send me more information? Your best bet is to reply and say, yeah, let's jump on a phone call. I'd love to tell you about it. And if they're like, yeah, can you just send me like a PDF or something? You have any material, a deck? And you're like, actually, like the way that the service works is we'll customize it for each person. So I'd love to hear more about what your needs are. Any of these times work for you for a call? Redirect to that phone call. You'll be able to like understand and glean so much more from your customers if you can get them on the phone. Now, I'm not saying you always, depending on your business, you may not always be on the phone with your customers, right? They may buy eventually a different way, but to start, you should get them on the phone. You should. And this is why I don't know if I can share my screen with y'all. Let me see. This is the tweet that really sparked this conversation. Let me see if I can share this. Nope, I'll put it in the chat instead. I can show folks on Instagram, but maybe not on here. This was a tweet that inspired this. The tweet says, unpopular opinion, you can sell almost anything before actually building it. And check this out. If you scroll down into the comment section, if you scroll down, you can see that someone says facts. And this, by the way, the person who posted this, Elizabeth Yen, she is a famous investor, so well-known investor. And so if you see the comment section, it says facts. So as an investor, does it just drive you nuts to hear people say we're pre-revenue right now? And she says, yes, I invest in pre-revenue, but there's an expectation. The reason I'm pointing this out to you is that there's an expectation now amongst investors, amongst all kinds of people, that you can do this and get customers before you've finished everything. That is the common understanding in startups now. So I'm telling you that to catch you up, because it used to be, the culture used to be that you would go and you raise a lot of money, you go get started, you get your business, you do a business plan, a really long business plan first, or you go get an investor before you've, built a thing, right? That is no longer the culture. Quick update. It's no longer the culture. There's an expectation that you'll go get customers first because it's so easy now. And I gave you a couple different ways that you can do that. Larry has a question. So since the link of the app can be changed at any time, would you recommend to select a few people to beta test your app prior to launching? Yeah. And I don't think it's wrong to have your beta testers be paying customers. Your beta testers can pay too, right? In fact, the main thing you're trying to validate here is, will people pay for this? That's actually the main thing you're trying to validate, right? So you can get some beta testers. That's good. But more than anything, what's more valuable is, will people pay, and what do paying potential customers think and say? It's the equivalent of what I was saying earlier, where it's like if you get people who aren't your ideal paying customers and you get feedback from them, they'll put you in the wrong direction. Like their feedback's not going to be that helpful because they're going to be telling you a bunch of stuff. And then you're like, okay, great, here's how much it costs. And they're like, what? I have to pay? So you want to be getting feedback from people who are going to be your ideal paying customers. And so it's not bad to ask for, you can do a discounted pricing for the first few customers. You can do all sorts of things, but I do recommend that you charge and see if people are willing to pay. It'll teach you that'll teach you the most, right? And then maybe if they said no the first time, then the next people you talk to, you may have to word it differently. But you should ask people like, okay, great, can you give me some feedback? Like, why was this not a good fit for you? Because you'll learn about how to talk about it. Okay. Cassandra said, thank you so much for that, because I was stumped. Yeah, of course, about the landing page. If you don't have a landing page yet, yes, you're just fine. The key here, what this is really about, this whole like mini lesson, by the way, is really about overcoming your imposter syndrome. Have y'all heard of imposter syndrome before? You guys know what that means? Put like a 1 in the chat if you've heard of the term imposter syndrome. Give me a 2 if you've never heard of that before. Imposter syndrome is, well, I'll give you a second to answer. I see answers coming in. Okay. Imposter, Joe says, no, I've never heard of it. One, I see some ones, people have heard of it. Let me just like catch everybody up on what imposter syndrome is. Imposter syndrome is where you feel like whatever you're working on or something about yourself, like it's not perfect yet. And because it's not perfect yet, everybody's going to find out that I'm a fraud and don't know what I'm doing, right? You are concerned that people will know somehow, they'll find out that you don't have everything together. That's what imposter syndrome is, right? And it is extraordinarily common amongst women, people of color, not exclusively, people who are like, I call like underdog entrepreneurs, right? Super common, right? So other people get it too, but it most shows up right on your face for those groups, right? Imposter syndrome is what it's called. If you want to Google it, look it up, you can. So the biggest thing around getting customers before you start is overcoming your imposter syndrome, because you are guaranteed to come up with a million reasons why you can't launch this thing yet. You're going to have so many reasons. It's going to be like your subconscious be like, wait, no, I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. They're going to laugh at me. That whole thing is happening. So the majority of entrepreneurship is getting out of your own way. 10% is like learning the skills that you need to be an entrepreneur, and 90% is getting the heck out of your own way. And when I say getting out of your own way, meaning like that voice is in your head, that subconscious voice, it's like, you're not ready yet. Don't do it yet. It's being like, thank you for your opinion, and moving forward anyway. It's the same voice. It's like, you don't want to go to the gym today. You could do it tomorrow. Thank you for your opinion. I'm going anyway. It's that same thing, right? So your subconscious is going to conjure up every single thing it can think of. Every reason not to launch this thing. It is just going to come right at you, and you get to be like, thank you for your opinion. I'm launching it anyway. Right. So mainly this is about overcoming your imposter syndrome. Right. M5 Partner says, before you had the technology set up for easy payment, what did you use to collect funds? I always had technology for easy payment. Easy payment online is pretty straightforward. Like worst case scenario, you could go to paypal.me and set up a page where people can pay through PayPal. So like worst case scenario, you could do that. I think I accepted my first payments through, I was using Typeform at the time. So I just used Typeform, and there's like a payment integration in Typeform. But there's all kinds of like easy accept payments online systems that I just sort of Googled some and used some early on. Yeah. Someone says it's the same as imposter syndrome is like self-destruction. Sometimes, I mean, like it's intended to protect us unless we're not trying to live safe lives, which most of you, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, are not trying to live a safe life, right? You're trying to do a risky thing because on the other side of a risky thing is reward. So that imposter syndrome reflex is really only useful if you're trying to play it safe. If you're trying to not play it safe, then that imposter syndrome is not that useful as like a response. Right. Is it possible to launch my app business in a different city from where I live? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the great thing about the internet is like you can have customers everywhere and all over the internet. The first customer that I had for my first business did live in the city that I was in, but I never met up with them. The second customer lived in a totally different city, and all the rest of my customers lived in totally different cities. So totally. All right. I told myself I was going to come up on here and do a 30-minute quick lesson, and we're already 45 minutes in. So we're going to wrap up here, but I'm going to start doing this on Thursdays. Is there any topics you would like for me to talk through? Topics around entrepreneurship, around like personal development as an entrepreneur, around skills you need to know as an entrepreneur? Type in the chat. Let me know if there are any specific topics you'd like to hear about. Because I can work that into my schedule of other things that I will talk about in coming up weeks. How did you solidify an app name before you got started? I took like a couple of days, maybe like a week to think through it. And then at the end of the week, I was like, whatever I got, I'm going to use this name. And if I need to change it, I'm just change it later. So I was writing down for my first company, I'm really bad at names, by the way. I did not come up with unique names. I'm very literal with my names of companies. So I was typing like collector. And really, actually, I found the name for my first company by looking at domains because I was looking at what domains are available. So it was like collector, and then I took off the R at the end, and collecto was already taken with a C. So then I changed the C to a K. That was my process of coming up with a name, right? It wasn't really that intense. Okay. Will you repost this on YouTube? Yes. I'm actually on YouTube right now live. So if you're watching on Instagram, it will disappear on Instagram, but it'll be on YouTube. Okay. I'm going to wrap up here. Oh, some of the things you guys want to learn about. Marketing as a startup, branding, networking. Okay, cool. Anything else here? Awesome. Okay, cool. Let's talk about that in coming up weeks. I am excited to talk to you guys next week. Oh, white labeling apps. Okay, we'll talk about that. Cool. All right. Thank you for the topic suggestions. I will see y'all same place, same time next week. Bye.